Okay. Lesson 1 of chapter 2. Explain basic virtualization concepts. How does vSphere fit into a software-defined data center and the cloud infrastructure? I'm sure you've heard of cloud infrastructure before. Maybe not software-defined data center. Describe how to proactively manage your vSphere environment. This is just an overview, not exact details. In terminology, what is an operating system? Hopefully, you would think of Microsoft Server or Linux, something like that, as an operating system. Applications, or an application. Well, you might think of Chrome and Office as application, but normally you as an IT person, you're thinking of application as HTTP server, DNS server, Active Directory, Canvas. That's what you should actually be thinking of as application. Virtual machine. You already have dealt with virtual machines. Just an operating system encapsulated into files and allowed to share access with a single physical machine. Guest. And that is basically the same thing as an operating system. Guest is the operating system that is running on a virtual machine. Hypervisor. Hyper-V, VirtualBox, Citrix Zen, and ESXi are some hypervisors that might come to mind. So they run directly on server blades and stuff like that, hardware. A host, well, that's the actual server. We've seen pictures of the blades, the 9 of them that we're messing with. They call those hosts because they're hosting the virtual machines. You ever host a gaming party at your house? No? Xbox Live really screwed that up. We used to have to carry our Xboxes to other people's house with network cables and switches and stuff, and run them down the hallways and stuff, and each bring their own TV sometimes. Have LAN parties, food, grilling out, so much better. Bring your own root beer and stuff like that. It's great. Other terminology. vSphere. I already talked about vSphere. It's kind of like saying Microsoft Office. It's a collection of software packages to run a data center. So it includes the hypervisor we just installed, that orange and gray screen we've seen, and then we went into the web interface, logged in, y'all poked around a little bit. That's one component. You have lots of other components that's a part of that. The client, the vCenter server, the lifecycle manager, site recovery manager, other components that you can add into that. A cluster, it's a group of hosts. Remember we said hosts are those actual servers? We're going to start off without having any type of cluster, but we're going to move in close to midterm. We're going to combine 2 groups together into one. So you'll have 2 servers. You actually have a cluster, 2 machines. So resources can be shared across 2 different servers, and management becomes easier. You can load balance. Machines can migrate from one to another while they're still running with something called vMotion. It's the next one. That is moving a virtual machine's hard disk or the RAM state of the virtual machine from one host to another without powering it down. Zero downtime. So if we did have one of the machines that had a RAM failure, when we get into a cluster, we can migrate the machines to the other host, shut the one down with RAM failure and reseat the RAM sticks or whatever needs to be done, change out a fan, power back on, migrate stuff back with vMotion. That is cool. I think I've seen this first time around 2009, 2010, Time Warner building. They had VMware 3 or something, and one of the co-owners of NSG is it NSG? Yeah. He showed me. He's no longer with the company, but he went somewhere else, then came back to another place, but whatever. It was cool. He said, watch this. We're going to ping and I'm going to move this across. And it like dropped one ping packet while it moved. And that was it. I'm like, that's cool. High availability protects against a host failure. So if a host does fail, you don't have to get up at 3 in the morning and drive down and try to get the virtual machines back up and going. It'll automatically do that for you. DRS automatically load balance machines as workload changes without you having to do anything. Unless you tell it to do it manually, and then it'll give you recommendations on what you need to do. They didn't go over fault tolerance, but there is fault tolerance, meaning that if a server completely fails, the virtual machine still runs. That's cool technology. It makes it have to run on 2 servers at one time. So if one fails, the other one's still there. That's awesome, but pretty expensive to set up. Your virtual machine has a guest operating system installed. Remember, we called it guest, right? So Linux or Windows. The statistics now in most of the hosting firms like Azure and stuff, there's more Linux virtual machines than Windows these days. And they're running some type of application, DNS server, Active Directory, something like that, file services, database, web interface into it, Home Depot, Lowe's, stuff like that. VMware Tools is a set of drivers that hook into the operating system. It has RAM drivers. It has drivers so that you can access the graphical processing unit directly on like NVIDIA cards and stuff. You need to do number crunching, scientific work, anything that's really numeric intensive. And especially the RAM, there's some cool RAM stuff that VMware can do that Microsoft can't. That beats out dynamic memory. In your virtual resources, CPU and memory. CPU is not really virtualized. I mean, the operating system actually sees the model of CPU you're running, and it tells the CPU what to do. The students that first started taking these classes, 2011, 2012, they were thinking of like a Nintendo emulator where they could play ROMs, play old Nintendo games. Like, no, that's virtualization is not an emulation, because you got to pretend to be like a Motorola chip on an Intel machine and translate all of that. And that's an extreme speed difference there. So you can only run really old software on and try to emulate. There's no emulation here. The operating system sees the processor. It just, the hypervisor only allows it so many clock cycles. Memory, though, I mean, yes, it does contain into RAM, but the hypervisor can do some interesting stuff and swap things out to a disk. And the guest doesn't really know if it's physical RAM or not. Network adapters are virtual. That's part of what's in VMware Tools. Disk controllers may or may not be virtual. Normally, you want to put it into a separate file, so you have a virtual hard disk. But you can not. You can pass a disk directly to a virtual machine. Some cluster systems, like Microsoft Cluster Service, requires that. We'll talk about that later. USB ports and stuff can also be passed into the virtual machines. They sell these cool little boxes that have like 20 USB ports on them, and it has an Ethernet cord and power cord out the back, and you can plug it into the network and map USB to virtual machines. What's the benefits? Compare a virtual machine to a physical server. So if you have a physical machine, it's difficult to move or copy the operating system. You're typically bound to a specific set of hardware components. You install the OS and it's linked to the motherboard because it's got chipsets. So you have to install the chipset drivers for that motherboard, and relatively short life cycle, 5 years, maybe maximum on warranty and stuff for a server. If people want to change it out, you have to actually go and touch stuff to upgrade hardware. And to upgrade hardware, your physical machine, you'd have to power it off typically. Some things are hot swappable and hot addable, but normally you'd power the thing off. There's a lot more downtime with the physical machine and less portable. If you brought a new machine that's 5 years from now, really it's kind of hard to move the OS over to that new machine. Take the hard drive out and slap in the new machine, it comes up and Windows blue screens because the drivers are set for the other motherboard and processor. You may have to run a sysprep and cross your fingers that it would come up and reinitialize and reload the drivers for the new system. But a lot of work, a lot of downtime, a lot of iffies there. Virtual machine, you can easily migrate the virtual machine from one host to another because it's just a set of files typically. And the set of files, they virtualize away the components like the network adapter and the hard disk controller and things like that. So it's pretty easy to move it to new hardware in 5 years. Just migrate it to a newer system. Sometimes you do have to shut it down because the processor is new, so you'd want to shut it down and boot it up so the OS would load the right drivers for the new processor. And it would just instantly run faster. So independent of physical hardware, because everything's encapsulated in files, isolated from other VMs running on the same physical hardware, and pretty much insulated from hardware changes. It's a whole lot easier. It's a lot of benefits. Especially when you got to change a fan out. Each server has 8 fans in it, and we have 10 servers. So that's 80 fans, plus the fans that are in the power supplies. And there's 2 in each power supply. So there's another 20. So there's 100 fans in the servers. Actually, and each fan is a double fan for backups. They're actually twinned. It's like that. There's 200 fans in those 10 servers. And then of course they gave me 2 more. I've not looked inside of those yet, but I think they probably have 20 fans each. So that's a lot of stuff a lot of chances of something going bad. I have probably 10 or 15 fans sitting in my office waiting to replace them as they go out. But virtualization makes it real easy. If I just had Windows installed on one of those systems, I would have to shut it down, open it up. Well, they're hot swappable fans, so now I wouldn't have to do that. I could just slide it out. Although some of them, the cords are too short for me to slide it out without unplugging it. So, but virtualized, I could move the machines off, and if one of them had a short cord on it, then yes, I could just power it off and pull it out, swap the fan, migrate machines back on it. So we have a nice little picture of a bunch of blade systems, a bunch of virtual servers, virtualized networking, virtualized storage. And you can even virtualize your desktops. You ever been on some of the thin clients across campus? We're not too happy with virtual desktops, but it's possible. The cool thing about virtual desktop is you can't assign it to a specific person. And if they go log into any system anywhere, they get the exact same desktop. So yeah, that's cool. And our servers run roughly 100, 150 virtual machines for the virtual desktops. Maybe that's why they run a little slow. So hardware-defined data center, just basically our software-defined data center. This VMware's wrote automated controls, and it controls all the hardware through web interfaces and automatically moves machines around. The hardware setup hasn't really changed in the last 30, 40 years in the way that you can set up SANs and remotely boot operating systems. But now that they've encapsulated virtual machines into files, and they've been able to rewrite how things are automated and backups and application defense and all kind of cool stuff. But the physical layers not changed drastically. Just your coders out there figured out new ways to make it look graphically pretty and not let you think about what's underneath it all. So yes, cloud computing, still using the same networking cables and the same like SAN setups and blade servers in the past. They're just a lot more efficient at it, so you have less servers, less hardware needed. Lifecycle automation. It just used to be called Update Manager. That's all it is. It's just an update manager. But they put big word on there, lifecycle automation. What is that? It's basically Windows Update for VMware. Patches the ESXi hosts and stuff. Ta-da! Lifecycle manager. Use these big words, make it sound more important and bigger salary. So they have a new Skyline. It's just, you've heard of AI, haven't you? Artificial intelligence. They've been working on it since like the 70s and 80s. All it is just computer systems making decisions faster than humans, being able to sort through hundreds of thousands of configurations and stuff and look at different possibilities much faster than the human can, and then popping up going, hey, this is getting out of sync here. There may be a problem. So what they're talking about here, they've got something called Skyline here that can monitor your system. There's other products out there. Veeam has something called Veeam 1 that can hook into Hyper-V and VMware data centers and monitor all the configurations and show a dashboard and pop-up analytics and let you know when trends are happening, hard disks are filling up or hard disks are starting to slow down. Maybe it's like, hey, this hard disk I've been watching it over the last 2 years, and the wait time queue on it for reading certain sectors has increased 68%. Like that drive's probably about to fail. So it can do stuff that you just can't look at all of the hardware out there, to possibly hundreds of hard drives, and keep track of all of those and know what they were a year ago to what they are now and see the trend line. So that's what the AI is actually doing. It's just keeping track of all the stuff and showing you charts. Not Skynet. It's Skyline, not Skynet. So it's just a health advisor that VMware is putting out. I don't know how long they will keep it, because third parties also have similar functionality. For a while, their lifecycle manager, update manager, could actually update Linux and Windows virtual machines. Now they've stopped doing that. It actually did more than just Linux and Windows. It could look inside, look at the apps and update Chrome and Firefox and stuff like that too. It's really cool. And then they decided we need to just focus our engineering on updating our products, not everybody else's, because there was already other products the big companies were using to keep track of that. It wasn't a big uptake to use VMware's product, and said, yeah, well, it's just wasting a bunch of money on hiring people to keep all this up when not too many people are using that. So they went back to focus on their core. But Skyline looks like it is focusing just on their products to alert you to availability issues that might occur because of you need to patch stuff or hardware issues, things like that. Advertisement. It's just advertising, marketing. So can you explain virtualization concepts? Why is virtualization better than hard physical machines? Move them around, easier to back them up. Cool stuff. Load balance them. Okay, what time do we got? So we got break time is what we have. Okay, we'll start recording. So before we do lesson 2, I'm going to access our student desktop. In Hyper-V on these machines, you have a VMware class virtual machine running. And that is your student desktop. So if it's off, go ahead and start it up, power it on. The synthetic SCSI controller failed the power on system. BC could not be found. Just hit close. So it said it can't find the ISO image. So you need to edit settings and dump that ISO out of the CD-ROM. Top settings. Apparently I'm controlling your system accidentally. Meant to go view only. Yeah, that DVD down there, just disconnect it. Just click none. Now it'll power on. Okay, I'm going to have to move the mouse to get off your screen.
So does both people do this, just one?
Everybody can access the login information you need. Admin number A or admin. Of course, the number is your group number. You remember what group you're in? And the password is just the pass 1, 2, 3, 4. And as you log into the Hyper-V, it should automatically be connected to the csnt.edu network.
Does one of us need to use A, and then we need to use B?
Yes.
Would you use? I'll just use.
It really, I mean, it's not going to hurt anything, but when you're working with the vCenter stuff and somebody does something wrong, you can, if both of you are using A, then who clicked the wrong thing? So if one uses A and one uses B, you can look at the event log at the bottom, go, Hudson, why did you click that? You deleted my machine. So all of the admin accounts are equal to each other. So as you're accessing it and figuring out which one of you wants to be an A and which one of you wants to be a B, let me show you some of the Active Directory setup here. So we have VMware. You also have a unprivileged student account, the same like student 1A, student 2B, stuff like that. We may access, I think they actually put permissions and stuff back into the labs this time around. But most of the time, we're just going to be running one of our admin accounts. So every one of these admin accounts are, equal to each other. If I look at one of these here, look at the member of, everybody's a domain administrator. Everybody is also an ESX admins group. ESX admins is not something that was created by default or anything by an automated process. I actually had to right click and say create new group, new global group, and type in ESX space admins, made sure the case sensitivity and everything was correct on it. It's in VMware vSphere's documentation that if you have an ESX admins group within your domain, it'll automatically pick that up and give that group administrative rights to certain VMware components, not all of them, but certain VMware components, one of them being the ESXi host. So if we join our ESXi host to csnt.edu, you can log in with your admin account and also have admin rights to the ESXi host. Yes, Rick.
For group 8, I only see one login there.
Well, that's interesting. There is only one. And I guess that's Lucas since he's over on this side. So apparently you're fired and not going to pass the course. Okay, copy.
I'm working with Caden.
Oh, okay, Caden. We even have a first and last name. Sure, whatever. Admin 8B. You want to be a next?
One, or do I just add another?
No, I was going to do it.
Now you have an account. Good catch.
Yeah.
Do I make a new account or do I change the name? Already. You should take control of it.
Yeah, there we go. What now? Dustin asked the question.
Do I make a new account or do I change the name?
You need to make a new account. I'm unsure of the words coming out of your mouth. What are you
Doing?
What are you doing?
Log out button.
Yeah, log out.
Not power.
No, right click the start menu and go to sign out.
Sign out.
What group are you, Dustin?
You do it.
So what group are you? 4? We'll go to other user. Click the maximize button. There you go. Now click other user. Now top admin for and then pass 1, 2, 3, 4. And you're signing into CSNT. So yeah, that's all you have to do. It'll create a profile for you in a desktop. So yes, I installed Active Directory. I created a csnt.edu domain and forest, created all the user accounts. I manually created the CSX admins group, and I put all of you admin accounts as members of it. So every admin pound or admin group number, A or B or C, I've had less than 9 servers in the past. We had to put 3 people on a server one time. All of you have the same access rights into the system, full domain privileges, and because I created the ESX admins group, you also have full administrative privileges to certain vSphere components too. The vCenter server doesn't automatically pick up ESX admins for everything, so there'll be some manual configuration changes in there. We'll have to add ESX admins, but it makes it real easy. You've got this one group in Active Directory, and once you apply that group to the vSphere components that don't automatically give admin rights to it, you go and say, hey, go look at this ESX admins group in Active Directory, assign it administrative rights to this particular component. Then you've got admin rights. These student accounts, though, are just regular users. So if we get into a section that covers permission, they may have you log in as a student, see what you can do versus what you can do as an admin. So you can compare. I'm going to leave it up to you to remember if you're admin A or B and what group number you're in. That's a lot. It's a lot of info. You might want to have a notepad or put the note in your phone. I'm admin 4B or 4A or whatever, because I've already forgot what Dustin is. I remember 4.
He is 8B.
Sounds pretty easy. It's the second one.
He is 4B.
Is everybody good? Did everybody find your Hyper-V? I think Brian's somewhere. He's having to take an extended break or something.
No, I'm here.
Oh, I didn't see you logged in to your VMware vSphere, your VMware class Hyper-V virtual machine. So this was lab 1, accessing your student desktop.
That was a full lab.
Yes, pretty much.
100.
Using your Chrome, I've got 3 browsers because based on the different versions of vSphere that come out and the different patch levels and the different patch levels of the browsers, you sometimes have to switch. So I don't know if y'all have Edge all updated on yours or not, but it's probably on your system, maybe, but I'll put all 3. We're going to attempt to use Chrome and see how Chrome uses. Normally I jump from Chrome to Firefox to Edge in that order if something doesn't work correctly the first time. Let's all start up Chrome. Type in your server, your Hyper-V server, ESX, your group number. Did I create a DNS entry for mine? ESX11.csnt.edu. Apparently I did. You also have the IP address, the 10.10.50 group number. But who remembers IP addresses? Well, IT people sometimes do. Go ahead and try to use the name ESX, your group number, .csnt.edu. So everybody's going to be like ESX8.csnt.edu or 1 or whatever. You'll just have a single digit. It's not 01 or 08. It's just the single letter, letter, the single number. So that's within your VMware class, virtual machine, and Hyper-V. You'll have to get advanced and proceed to the host. So when we installed, you remember what, well, your partner may have installed, I don't know, but root in the past 1, 2, 3, 4, bang. Bang. ROOT, capital BASS, 1, 2, 3, 4, bang, and you notice that's one character, that's the exclamation point. So if you were the installing person on Tuesday, maybe you remember that. If you are the watcher, well,
I remember it now.
make some, this is something you might want to make some notes, because we start having local root accounts, and we'll have a vSphere administrator accounts, and then we'll join to the domain and be able to log in with our domain accounts. So we can get some confusion here going on. Dustin, you have a blank screen. Let's do some troubleshooting. So you did esx4.csnt.edu. And if you refresh that, what happens?
I refreshed it 3 times.
Check your little, it's not really a hamburger. Yours is a skinny hamburger. You've got, they made round balls of dough and a round ball of meat and another round ball of dough, like, plunk. Yeah, go to help and about, see what version you're running. So you're running the latest 97 version? No. When this updates itself to version 97, try it again. That may have been the problem. That seems to be an issue. It says the update is running, but why don't you close down Chrome and open up your task manager, see what's going on with your task. So do we have any Chrome? We have Chrome installer running. There's also something slamming your CPU. What's slamming your CPU? Windows Update. Well, that modules installer could also be installing Chrome. Go check your cogwheel, go check your Windows Update, see if it's installing Windows Updates. Yep. So you got 2 things going on. You got a cumulative patch installing and Google Chrome trying to update itself. And it's just not going to go anywhere until that's done. Was your partner able to access? Okay. So Dustin, you're kind of just stuck until your machine finishes updating itself. Notes you should have. My accounts, my domain accounts. You know, your admin, pound. I'll just use a. Of course, don't use pound. Use your number. That would be some useful stuff to have as a note somewhere, either in a phone or save it on your desktop or something like that, or in your email. Your ILO address in case you have to check. You come in and you can't access your server via its host name or IP address. You might have to ILO in and see if a power outage happens, the servers won't automatically turn back on. So as you come in, there's a disconnect. You can check ILO to see if your physical server is up and going. Or if there's a hardware problem, if 2 fans fail inside the server, then the server will power itself off. So you can check your hardware status, let me know, hey, I've got double fan failure, fan block 3 and fan block 7 are out my server. Well, I'll have to go slap new fans in it. There's some critical thinking here that things break. If you work at help desk, IT is broken all the time for somebody. You're always fixing something. You're gonna hit that into this class. It's really good experience to have things not work right.
Yeah, client's ILO over the weekend, the physical host died, so we couldn't even access the ILO. So we had to send some, Monday morning was not very happy customer, so we had to send some.
So y'all hear that, right? We have workers in the IT field. Yes, they are using this exact stuff. Dell is DRAC, the Dell remote access card is called a DRAC. What is incredible?
Because we'll be recorded late. So I'm just gonna ask you to please be quiet.
Just so happy I'm working with such an amazing IT professional.
Okay, I'm going to scroll and read through lab 1 and just, lab 1 is sort of what we did. See, they have different domain and administrator account and passwords than we do in here. They talk about using Firefox, but we do have Firefox just in case something breaks in the future. We logged into our ESX host root and we use pass123 bang because I picked that instead of the VMware 1 exclamation point or bang there. You're used to typing pass1234 and LAN and operating systems class and all the other classes you've taken. So instead of reinventing the wheel and using what they have in the instructions, well, I went ahead and picked what you're familiar with. Exploring your system. So you've got logged in. There's a little bit more in lab 1. How many CPUs do you have in your system? How much memory does your ESXi host have? Is NTP service running or not? So explore the interface. How many virtual machines are on the host? Some of this stuff is not set up. The host should be highlighted directly whenever you log into the system. As you scroll down, you find it's an HP ProLiant DL380p Gen 8. You could Google the specs and the pictures and the motherboard if you want to look at the pictures of the inside of it. How many processors I've got? It says I have 12 CPUs. What? As I expand out the CPU though, 2 sockets. 2 sockets. So that means I've got two physical processors in there.
6 cores.
6 cores per socket. So the 12 CPUs is because, well, each core is a CPU in its own, just, multiple processors in one die packed into one package. And with hyperthreading, you have 24 logical processors. Neat. The one I'm on is a 2640 with version 0. You're all in version 2. I'm on a little bit older system than what y'all got because this was the donated one. How much memory do you have? Is everybody showing 64 gigs? 63.97. Because I worked really hard to make sure all those RAM sticks would work. Reseating them all. And everybody should have 63 point something. These systems have, the donated system has 128 gig of RAM. Do I find network time protocol? How can I find where network time protocol is? Can you find it? Where'd you find system information?
So under, just scroll down.
Ah,
I guess, yeah, it's one of the cards there.
I don't see if NTP is running or not. I see my date and time. But I'm looking to see if the network time protocol is running or not. NTP. That is in the lab right here. Question number 2. Is NTP service running on the ESXi host? We've already answered it's the processors.
Service status stopped.
Where did you find it?
Go under manage, under host. And under time and date on the left.
NTP date.
NTP is stopped and not configured.
So how do we configure that?
Actions.
We could configure it, but let's see. Let's wait till we get to that step. We just wanted to see, is it configured or not? It's not, so that's a bad thing. We've noted that. So to-do list, that must be configured. If you remember Tuesday, I said it's really important.
Super important.
Are any virtual machines running? No. Which makes the last question, what are the guest operating system types on the virtual machines on this host? The none.
NA.
Mhm. It tells us to log out, but I'm not going to log out. You can look and see how to log out, but let's not log out yet. Change password, log out, settings, blah, blah, blah. Cool. You located it. It's half the battle. We're not logging out yet. Log into the vCenter server. We don't have a vCenter server installed and configured yet. The lab was written to where some of the stuff was pre-set up, but we're also, Virtual Beans is supposed to be a new company and we're supposed to be implementing this from the ground up. So how would we have vCenter server already there?
So handy dandy button.
I took the task literally that we're not going to have vCenter server until we actually do it. So we cannot do task 3 because it doesn't exist yet. It shows us some pictures of what vCenter server might look like and what our host might look like and data centers might look when we get it installed. Kind of a similar spot for the logout. But vCenter is not there yet. At some point in time, next week, we'll probably deploy vCenter server. Not today. I want to get that second donated server up and running. And I want to put these vCenter servers on the 2 donated servers. So they're not running on your host and getting in your way. And you one of your partners accidentally deleting it and then wondering why that nobody can log in, configure anything anymore. So I'm going to shove them up on my donated servers where just you don't really see them. They'll be literally in a cloud. My cloud. Moving on to looking at lab 2, configure an ESXi host. Well, we've already logged into the ESXi host. Task 1, add an ESXi host to Active Directory. The process of step 9 down here, clicking join the domain, that can only be, we'll say, student A, unless you don't have everybody in your group here. So everybody can do these steps up until the last point of actually clicking and running the script. So A and B, we'll do the step. We'll use Chrome. We'll click. We're already logged in. So step 1's done. We didn't log out before. Yes, Dustin. Jeremiah, you can't get logged in? I think he's the only one in his group. esx3.csnt.edu, and he's inside his virtual machine. What is going on with his computer? Let's check out Jeremiah's network adapter stuff. Is there something wrong with IP? It should just be.
Network location awareness have anything to do with issues happening?
That looks okay. There is it's an 11, but that's the same server as .10. You misspell something? CSNT, that looks right. ESX3.CSNT. Can you go somewhere else? Reputable news site? No, that's not a reputable news site. Too long to respond. All righty. More troubleshooting. That's where the ILO would come into play. Look at the console. Can't get logged in. I said go check out ILO. The server's off. That's why we couldn't get logged in. So why was the server off? Okay, when that boots up, you'll be able to access it. Connect to first must be out of internet. Brian Henry just lost internet.
Stocked up on more internet, man.
Yep,
Man.
you gotta put that in your closet. So you know, when it goes out, you just use that excess internet. Okay, you're already logged into the ESXi host. Most everybody, hopefully. Some of you went under manage and stuff, but step 2, it actually says go to manage. And I'm not going to do any other steps because we got to be at the exact time for it to work. So I guess we should probably configure NTP early on. I'm pretty sure you can figure it later on in the lab somewhere. I don't like they're out of order. They don't do stuff in the order I want to do things in. So Wade's already told us how to get to NTP, and you've all looked at it. What I recommend doing at this point is opening up, if you're under manage, under system, and you click time and date, is this go ahead and open up another tab so we can copy some NTP servers. It's just NTP pool, Google that. So it's ntppool.org. I want North American servers. So click North America. And I've got all these servers right here, except for the word server. I don't need the word server. Why do they do that? I'm going to copy all that into a notepad. And I'm going to put off the extra text that's not part of the server name. I like the NTP pool project. They've got 4 main servers here that coordinates. They're actually linked to over 900 NTP servers across North America. And these 4 servers, when they're communicated with, it geolocates you based on your IP address the best that it can, or if your system is providing location information to the servers, it will geolocate you. And out of those 999 servers, it'll pick the one that's closest to you so that you can communicate with it to get the most accurate time. So I like the service. There's also time.microsoft.com and some other big ones out there that a lot of people use. I like these. Just it's free. I like their concept. So we're going to copy all of those. And to configure this, let's have student B in the group actually do the configuration. So if you're student B, let's go and do the configuration. Student A can yell at student B and help them if they're not doing it right. So we're going to, what would I do first? Walk me through it. Probably click edit. Yeah, he's not here, so you have to do it. If your partner's not here, you have to do everything. You become A and B. You get lucky. So Brian's not here. Whoever's partnered with Brian has to do all of this. I don't know who's partnered with him, but his internet died. So we want to edit NTP settings. What do you think I would do here?
We're going to click that second bubble.
But use network time protocol?
Yeah. And then put our
Start and stop manually, or should we automatically start and stop it? I'd probably automatically start and stop it. And then just paste. Separate servers with commas. I probably need to put commas after each one of these then. If I read my directions, did anybody else read directions? Cool. Now what would I do?
Services after you save that,
Oh, I have to save it. Okay.
and then start the ATP service.
Actions. Maybe. Is there an action? Not an action. I thought actions normally popped up. So you said go to services, find NTP and click start. It should auto refresh after short periods. If you're the other partner watching, you can see the recent tasks down in the bottom. It should show you what your partner is doing. And when I clicked back on time and date, it still said stop until I hit refresh. So if you subtract 6 hours from that,
Six hours and 2 minutes off.
so mine is off by more than 5 minutes. Yep.
Not about a minute.
Yeah.
So right now we are reaching the point of break time. So we should be 15:50 right around there. If yours isn't 1550, if yours more than 1545 or 1555 off, it looks like we've reached another break time.
Mine says it is stopped still, and I've refreshed and I put comments in and everything.
Which computer you're logged into? 3. Let me view your setup. So the servers are all in there, looking good. Show stop. Go to services. Show me what you got under services tab. See, you're on. Yeah, there you go. And then scroll down, find your NTP. It stopped. Click NTP and then click the start up there. Okay, now go back to system and click the refresh. Now it's running.
All right, thank you.
And your system looks like it's within the right time. Like I said, we're going to take a 10-minute break. When we come back, I'm going to see if this NTP, hopefully, they normally have a random time before they hit and refresh itself. Let me resume recording. Okay. So I didn't record all of that, but we come back off a break and we refreshed and made sure that our time updated itself after our 10-minute break, that it matches. So we have to subtract 6 from UTC time to figure out what time it is here local. Subtracting 6 puts it as 10:08 and it's 10:08. So I can join my domain at this time. The lab says security and users. Authentication. Active Directory is not enabled, so join a domain button. csnt.edu. Your admin accounts. I don't know who I'm logged in as. Doesn't really matter. Maybe there's a 10A. Is there a 10A? I guess I should look. Yep. I mean, you added Windows 10 machines to domain. Just actually domain name, username, password. That's it. If you have any issues, I can reset the account in Active Directory. That may have some issues since there was an Active Directory connection last spring under the same name. I've had a few people have that issue, but I think most of you said if you did it click join, click refresh, is it joined in?
I had to leave because I put the username and password in incorrectly.
Hmm.
And then I joined, I'm trying to join it again. It won't the domain. Like I joined it once and I left the domain after entering the credentials wrong.
Well, it shouldn't if you left the domain. If it joined it, then you wouldn't. If it said you joined, then it shouldn't have had any problem. But if you joined and then left, then you probably have to restart. So I mean, if you put in like the wrong, if you put administrator and pass 1, 2, 3, 4, it would have joined. So if it successfully joined and then you disjoined, it may not rejoin until you reboot. So to reboot should be, whoop. Why is it not showing me? Not going full screen. There we go. Should be a. You right click in your host and reboot. Now take about probably 10 minutes. Once you've joined the domain, it doesn't say anything about us needing to reboot. It says we should try to log out and log in with our domain account instead of root. Let's investigate. If I log out, am I able to log in as admin at a sub or at csnt.edu? So your admin group number A or B at csnt.edu. And your pass 1, 2, 3, 4. Does that work? It worked on mine. But you do have to type it as an email. Admin 4a at csnt.edu. See some errors. There it goes. Did you put the exclamation point? Okay. Yeah, that is a little confusing. The Active Directory doesn't have an exclamation point, but the local root password does. So. The vCenter server is even a little bit easier. It has a little checkbox that you can check. You have to download some plugins, the service, and install into the computer. And when you launch the website to the vCenter server, there'll be a checkbox by the username and password field said, you want to use your Windows session credentials? You just put the little checkbox and hit log in. You don't even have to type anything. It'll do a single sign-on because you're logged into Windows. It'll pass your Active Directory token and log directly in. The ESXi hypervisor itself doesn't have all that extra software for the single sign-on hook. So you do have to type in, but you only have to remember your username and password, not the local root account. Hopefully joining didn't look too hard. It was just join, type the domain name, username, password, click join, that was it. Other than making sure NTP was configured. That should have been part of the lab before we joined the domain, but it wasn't. Somebody's internet came back up. Welcome back, Brian.
Yeah, I'm finally back.
Who's your partner?
I don't know. I have to look.
I didn't look to see if your partner did the work. Let's look. Tristan Copeland. Tristan wasn't here today, was he? Tristan Frame's here. Okay, so Tristan Copeland's not here. I don't know where that you left off at, but we went in and set the NTP protocol up.
Yeah, I didn't even get into any of that. I didn't.
This here will be recorded, but we set up the NTP protocol so that we had to go to time and date, edit settings, and put in the NTP. We copied them off of ntbpool.org.
All right, but since you recorded, I can go back and do it.
Yep. We also joined it to our Active Directory domain and then logged in with their admin at csnt.edu account. Make things nice and easy. So Wade, you can log out and log back into the system with your admin, admin 2B, 2A at csnt.edu and pass 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't put an exclamation point like Dustin did. And of course, I'm talking about your web interface, not your Windows machine. So just log back in as your admin 2A whatever account. So we joined, or Hudson joined to Active Directory. So you can log out as root and log in as your Windows credentials. So if I was to ask, or like I'm a manager, what's the benefit of joining your hypervisor into Active Directory? What's the main purpose of that? What benefit did we just get out of joining it? Yes. Single sign-on. You can use your same Windows credentials in vCenter as you do on Windows. You don't have to worry about root anymore.
See who fucks shit up. I'm sorry, who messes things up?
Yes. So that was Wade that was cursing him.
I meant.
So I pointed out several benefits. Single sign-on, only having to memorize one username and password. And then down here in the recent task and the logs and stuff, the person that initiated the changes on the system will be recorded. So I have auditing purpose. Let me check the lab out again. So I was saying this task 1, we used some critical thinking and realized we don't have vSphere.local. I showed you csnt.edu. I showed you your administrator username and password at pass 1, 2, 3, 4. So you took the lab and realized we don't have that. I'm going to use my credentials and fill those in correctly. You know, on the job, you're going to have books to like tell you how to use the application, and they're going to have examples like that, and you're going to have to change that to what your company's using. Task 2 is, well, most of us all, we logged off and then logged back into the ESXi host. Again, we didn't use this made up admin account they have in their directions. We used our admin 2A and our pass 1, 2, 3, 4. And we got logged in correctly. Enabling SSH and the vSphere ESXi shell. Important note, in production environments, you want to keep SSH disabled and the ESXi shell disabled. And that stops remote attacks. It also stops somebody from plugging a monitor into the host and being able to drop to the shell without logging in correctly. Well, both of these services are used for troubleshooting. If you read VMware's strict documentation and stuff, is you only turn these on if you're on a tech support call with them and they're telling you to turn them on. I've never paid for the extra tech support. So I always Google and SSH in if I need to and fix stuff. It's normally a piece of hardware that's no longer supported. I want to hack around until it works. Because if it's not a supported piece of hardware, if anything's not supported, they're not going to help you. They're going to go, oh, no, you need a new server. We don't provide support for that. But we want to click on manage, click on services, and
Only one of us needs to do this.
the TSM-SH needs to be enabled. There's two servers. So how about A, turn on the TSM, and B, student, turn on the TSM-SSH. It doesn't tell me to edit them and change their startup state. The next time the server restarts, they will be off, which that looks like what their intent is. Yeah, but they don't say to do that. With these services started, we'll have an alert that pops up that says, hey, warning, SSH remote access is enabled. I have like a red constant. So they probably didn't make us go in and edit these settings to start and stop with hosts. At some point in time, they would likely say, we'll restart your system, and then that warning will go away. Now you can see down here at the bottom, the recent task. You should see that A did something and B did something, unless you're missing one of your partners. So now we have accountability because we joined Active Directory. Does that make sense for everybody? Cool. Y'all feel like you know more than you would if you were a first semester? That's good. I've had some people show up, I haven't learned anything. I'm like, what does TCP stand for? Well, blah, blah, blah. Did you know that beforehand? No. What is this? I didn't know that before either. Well, you've learned stuff. Transmission control protocol? Sure. Okay, we've completed lab 2. Neat. So we're going to do some other setup and stuff. Before you can do lab 3, we'll need to jump ahead and do some future labs, actually make connections. I have ISO images. I think it's CentOS 8 or 7, but right now we don't have the ESXiOS configured to access those resources. We're setting up NFS client and stuff later on, so we'll need to jump ahead before we can actually create and do lab 3. And that won't be today though. We've just done some basics and clicked around, and our host has the capability of running a bunch of virtual machines. Here, if you click on host, you got a warning. What got yellow? That's pretty much the purpose of why they made you enable those two. What's your yellow warning? Yeah, disable those services unless it's absolutely necessary. So those warnings are going to stay there, and as long as SSH and the ESXi shell is enabled. That allows you to get to a bash shell command prompt, either through SSH or on the direct command line user interface. You can Control Alt F2 or whatever, jump over to a shell and access and really do some damage. Introduction to vSphere and software defined. Well, let's see, didn't we already? We're supposed to be on lesson 2. Started all the way over, right? Lesson 2. Virtualization of resources. Explain how the vSphere interacts with the CPU, memory, and networks and storage. We haven't set up any virtual machines yet, but here we got the ESXi hypervisor. This is what we've installed, and this is what we've been logging into through the web interface. And that orange and gray screen, that's this right here, the big blue block. And it's installed directly onto our Blade servers. And the Blade servers have processors, 2 of them, 64 gig of RAM, and a random amount of hard disk space, because I just randomly found hard drives to shove into them. So all of you probably have different size hard disk and storage. And you've got 4 network adapters plus your ILO. And these 4 adapters are plugged into different things. Some of them goes into the SAN, storage area network. Others go out for management and to the router, so internet purposes. That network will allow these virtual machines to be able to go out to the internet if need be. So any application and any supported OS can run in a VM, a guest operating system. They can consume any of these resources, but you configure the virtual machines to use a certain amount of the resources. There's your physical and virtual lined out again. You have all of the hardware is dedicated to one operating system. And for security purposes, you're supposed to limit it down to one application. You run into DNS server, you run DNS, maybe Active Directory because they run hand in hand. DHCP server, running it on a Windows server on hardware. Don't put anything else. Don't do file shares. It keeps any more services that you expand out, you have issues of security. Virtualization fixes a lot of expense because you have to have a physical server for every single one of those apps. But now I can run 3 virtual machines on the same hardware, run DHCP on one, DNS and Active Directory on another, print and file services on the third, and it's all using the same server. And you can move those off, and if one of them gets too busy, you can move it to another blade. Cool benefits. All the little lines right there, like the network connections. So each one of the virtual machines is configured. And if you have a database and a web app, it's cool to put them on the same server because they can network connection and RAM and communicate back and forth. They won't be limited to a gig or 10 gig card or whatever you have. So that makes things really fast. They do run on actual processor. They do consume real RAM. They consume hard disk space somewhere, and they eventually will, if you got it set right, they will come out the network adapter and hit switches and routers and go out on the internet, just like any operating system. But when they're talking between each other, they can use the virtual, like if they're on the same system, this network connection can be made in RAM, so it doesn't actually have to use any resources. Neat. So just more pictures, customize at will. Your will. You can't, here, the operating system has all 4 cores. Over here, they've got, well, this can only access that 1 core. This one can access 2 of those, and this one has access to all 4. So you can spec out just how much each VM is going to access. Same thing, spec out the RAM.
We already do that, right?
Hyper-V is a hypervisor, so yes, it's same.
What's the bigger difference between Hyper-V and yes?
Well, you don't have to have full like Windows and gigabytes of stuff installed, and it's a lot smaller footprint, and the memory, they have memory compression, they have memory data deduplication, ballooning, and memory compression. Hyper-V only has dynamic memory. So you can't share RAM from one virtual machine to the next like you can. This is a lot faster, will handle a lot heavier load than Hyper-V will on the same hardware. So run more virtual machines on the same hardware versus Hyper-V. But the concepts are dissimilar to each other. Microsoft uses different words. They use like checkpoint instead of snapshot. You know, everybody else uses snapshot and Microsoft uses checkpoint. They originally used snapshot until they decided, wait, everybody else is using that. We got to come up with something different.
Proprietary.
Why, Microsoft? Why? Use industry standard computer jargon, but they made sure they did their own words.
Proprietary.
Another picture, networking. Your operating system controls one network card, goes out. Virtualization, even Hyper-V, same thing in Hyper-V, VirtualBox, they all do the same thing. You've got a software-defined switch and RAM that your virtual machines can communicate with it, and you can connect that software-defined switch to your physical adapter called a bridge connection, and you can go out. With ESXi, your network adapters, the bridge connection, it creates a trunk port. So you got to talk to your Cisco guy, HP guy, whatever your switch guy is, and tell them you need to make sure that's defined as a trunk port. It's plugged into the server. It's no longer an access port. So that's a difference between physical and hypervisor. Storage. Well, you get access to a local hard disk, or you could get access to an external SAN. Virtual architecture, multiple servers can get access to the same external storage. They could have internal storage too, like a regular server. We do have a little bit of space randomly, whatever hard drive size you have in there. But not a huge difference between the physical and the virtual, except Hyper-V does have the ability to have multiple servers share the same hard disk externally. That way the multiple servers can see the virtual machine files. And if you want to migrate a running virtual machine from one server to another, since they can both see the file, that's how you can migrate it. And then this one can start writing to the disk file once it's moved. That's a huge benefit. Hyper-V allows you to have access to GPUs. You have some issues with other virtualization software allowing access to GPUs. But ESXi does. Even I think VMware Player has a little bit of issue, but EXI will allow full access to GPUs. So maybe you have a blade system that's got some NVIDIA A100 cards in it. They have no graphics out, but they just have tons and tons of GPU compute power. Use those as a like mini supercomputer to number crunch things. Password cracking, whatever you're going to do with it. In these days and times, probably doing some type of research to figure out new vaccines, cancer research and stuff. So that's why you would have a server with a bunch of really high-end graphics card that had no video output. You can also put them with the video outputs, but normally no monitors connected. It's still using them for process intensity. CAD drawing. Maybe you're running a VDI and your CAD engineers are using a thin client. So your CAD engineers need processing power to draw 3D models and different stuff to render for your factory to produce the product, they would need access to GPUs. Some more detail. You need an Intel Xeon chip. If you notice, we looked at our servers, they're all Xeons instead of Intel I series. If you're putting it on like an Intel i5, VMware is going to go, we don't support that processor. It might install and work, but they're not going to help you. It has to be on a Xeon chip class. AMD, Opteron, probably getting a little bit obsolete because they have the Epics out now. So you have to look at their support. Which ones of AMD processors do they support? You look at the server line, the later Opteron, like Gen 4 Opterons, then moving on up into Epic 1, 2, and 3 class. So as they put out new versions of ESXi hypervisor, they stop supporting older chips because as the manufacturers put out new processors, they add new security circuitry and stuff to them. So they want to make sure that the hypervisors can take advantage of the latest circuitry to stop ransomware and buffer overflow exploits. So they'll stop supporting and even compile it, the kernel, where it has to see the circuitry of the newer chips so you can install it. You'll get a purple screen. You've heard of blue screens, but you'll get a purple screen. I know. Because they said we don't support the CPUs and you got to buy new servers. So we went ahead and we're ordering new servers, but went ahead and looked at my old server and it says it won't go on this anymore. I'm going to make sure, and yes, it purple screens. When it tries to start the installer, blink, processor not supported. Like, all righty. You're serious about not working. Any questions? No? You can't move a virtual machine from a Xeon to Epic without powering the virtual machine off first. That's one thing. You can't keep it running because the operating system's going to, what the heck? Why did I go from Intel to AMD? Windows can't. Windows actually has something called hardware abstract layer, DLLs, that load up based on the processor it detects, the bootloader. Once that's in RAM, you can't change that. You have to power it off before you can't live switch from one processor to another. I think we've already looked at the user interface, didn't we? You have your desktop. You can use Power CLI. PowerShell. Loading up the modules, make a connection to the server, run scripts. An ESXi command line interface. So you're gonna have a folder with DOS commands, executables in there that you can make a connection and write batch script files and stuff like that. The vSphere client and the vSphere host clients are really just the web interface. We've logged in right now to the vSphere host client. The vSphere client is the web interface into the vCenter server. It runs a HTTP server on it with the vSphere client app running. Both of them are web-based now, which is great. They used to have actual standalone clients that you could install into Windows, install into Macs or Mac OS, or install into Linux. So they had to maintain 3 separate installations and maintain them for 3 separate manufacturers of operating systems that you could connect in. They got smart and realized you could just build it in a website and make the app have to run through a web browser and just let Google worry about creating Google across Linux, Mac, and Windows. So they did, and they don't have to worry about writing 3 different operating system clients. They got some smart people working there that are lazy. That's what you want. lazy smart people. Like, I don't want to work 3 times as hard. All using HTML5 now because Java and Flash were dropped. Used to, it was written in Java and Flash, and then when Adobe says we're not going to allow Flash anymore, and all the operating systems and browsers says we're going to stop Flash from working in our browser and Java 2, they had to switch to HTML5. You miss Flash and all the Flash games. So many Flash games, so many viruses that we miss out on. So 700 commandlets are added with the PowerShell. If you load that into your Windows, you have to install that in for you PowerShell lovers out there. So that is all of module 2. Next week, we plan on configuring our ESXi host to access external storage. So you remember the pictures of the servers, show there's like 3 boxes sitting up there. Well, only 2 of them are actually NAS for this class. The other's a backup for our department. And then I've got another Dell server sitting outside the rack that's not rack mountable. I'm running NAS software on that we can connect into. And then I've got a virtual machine running Linux that is sharing a folder on the Linux machine with the network file system, the NFS protocol. That has the ISO images that we're going to use to install virtual machines with. So we need to be able to get access to that. And we need to be able to get access to the NAS systems so we have a place to put the virtual machines on. Those are kind of labs later on than lab 3. We might look at, I'll look at which lab is setting up NFS. I'll look at which lab is setting up something called iSCSI to connect into the SAN. We'll configure that so we can see the external storage. And we're going to install Linux instead of Windows. Just y'all know Windows, use it every day. Y'all have used Windows Server and LAN 1 a lot. So I wanted you to get used to virtualizing Linux. Probably see quite a bit of that out there. Okay, you don't even have to log out of your Hyper-V VM class thing. Just close it down and get ready for your 11 o'clock. And I will post this video and go and end the meeting.